Hi, I'm Ben, and welcome to Subject Access, a podcast where I interview experts who work at the intersection of law, privacy, and AI. In each episode, we unpack what the rules are, how organizations are implementing them, and what's coming next. Today, we're looking at a topic which a lot of in-house professionals are dealing with right now, how to implement AI. And we're looking at it from the specific angle of how to get buy-in from your team, the business, and wider stakeholders. In this episode, I'm privileged to be joined by two experts in this space, also a current and former colleague, Elly Meenan and Laura Jeffords-Greenberg. Elly has a background in legal operations, and for the past year, she's been a legal ops engineer at Wordsmith and has recently taken on an exciting new role as an evangelist for legal engineering. Laura is general counsel at Worksome, and with her expertise in AI, she is building out an AI native legal function. Laura has long advocated for legal ops and engineering and has been a vocal voice in the legal AI space. Before we begin, I'd love to hear a bit more about both of their journeys, both of your journeys, and why you've been advocates for AI in the legal space and beyond. Perhaps, Laura, great to start with you.
Yes, that's a great question. I think ever since I've been working in law, there have been, manual processes or just things where it's like, why can't we use technology to fix this? Like, why am I doing this? This doesn't seem like a good use of my time. So when AI came out and the large language models, I was like, oh my God, this is going to fix everything. I'm sure all of us know that in the beginning, 'cause I was very enthusiastic, but it was challenging. But now where we've come to with AI, it is really rapidly changing how I do legal work. So something that is really interesting is that I was at Worksome and then I left and went to Wordsmith for about 14 months. And then I returned back to Worksome. So I had a 14-month gap. And how I did work previously versus how I'm doing work now is completely different. Like, it is a completely different ball game in those 14 months. So I think that's really fascinating. And that's what I get really excited about is how we can change how legal operates with technology.
Thanks, Laura. And just before we turn to you, Elly, what it'd be really interesting, Laura, just hear your kind of what the big changes are. You mentioned you've seen a lot of change. What would you say are the top one or two things that you've seen?
It would be that, well, first, AI was connected to the internet. Or when ChatGPT first came out, right, it wasn't connected to the internet. It was hallucinating. It had data cutoff dates. We don't have that anymore. So that's one. Real live data is one. And then the second is that we are now, I don't know if you want to call it agentic AI, but AI systems are now operating. So like Claude often will just take over. I think it gets frustrated with me and it's just like, let me just take over a computer and I'm going to do this for you. So now AI is actually doing the legal work. The simplest example is Claude is now creating Notion pages for me. Right before that took a long time and we need to do that. But now the pace at which I can create documentation or contracts is just, I don't know if it's like 10 or 20 fold. It depends on what you were working on, but it is absolutely insane. You don't have to organize your folders anymore. AI can do that for you. So there's all this admin work that AI can do for you that I don't have to do anymore.
Nice. Thanks, Laura. Elly, over to you.
Yeah. My background's a little bit funny, I would say. So I always caveat with I did a law degree, but very, very quickly realized I didn't want to qualify as a lawyer. So I didn't go down that route. But funny enough, my career has always been impacted by AI. So when I graduated, like I said, did not want to qualify, but still loved law. I loved that sphere. I loved the people in that profession, but I was always very techie. So I wanted to figure out a way that I could sort of marry those two ideas together. But I just couldn't figure it out. So when I graduated, I had the opportunity to work at Bright Flag. And that was around the time where AI was really, really starting to develop. So I was very lucky to be able to work on training their models on their e-billing software. And while I was there, I learned about legal operations. And I still to this day don't understand how, but I ended up becoming the legal operations manager at Doc Planner. And this is when like ChatGPT was really, really starting to kick off. And that's when I think we started to see, yeah, the large language models really, really starting to take over and develop. And that's when I bought Wordsmith and I became a customer. So I stayed there for around 2 years and then I moved over to Wordsmith, where I've been for, I think it was my anniversary yesterday. So happy anniversary to me. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see there's, a lot of people who see the benefit in these tools and then end up going and working in places which are either building them or are, really heavy adopters and heavy users of them. Cool. Okay. So, when I was thinking about this episode, I wanted to have a bit of an aim. And I think whilst this is very much like a privacy leaning podcast, I want to broaden this one out slightly to legal and privacy functions and think about how implementing AI within those functions, like how can people get adoption? How can they get buy-in? How can they measure impact? How can they deal with cultural challenges? And I know we have all of us spoken about these kinds of things before. So I think there's probably quite a bit we can discuss. And for me, any kind of change management or any building of anything or any project that involves people, that should be the starting point. It needs to be a people focused thing. So you can have the best tool in the world, but if no one uses it, I heard a good term the other day, shelfware. I really like that one. Just sits on the shelf.
Shelfware.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
that was a good one. So my question, perhaps Laura, as you're going through this process at the moment, how important is culture when adopting AI into legal teams, and how would you go about building that culture, or how are you going about building that culture, perhaps?
I think it's crucial. Like you said, if you don't have the culture or the support to use the tools, then the teams aren't going to do it. So the biggest challenge is just changing habits, right? We're used to working one way, we're comfortable working this way, we know what to expect. Um, with AI, we're being forced to change how we work and also forced to change, I think, how we look at what we do as lawyers or legal professionals. So that can be scary for some people. So when I first started teaching lawyers how to use AI, I actually started from an emotional place. Like, how do you feel about AI? There's no right or wrong answer. And it's really interesting if you actually delve into that first. Oh my God, and I used an AI word that I never used before AI. I just said delve. Sorry. I'm
Let's
policing
jump
myself.
right in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ah, see, it's influencing all of us.
The result? Question mark.
Yeah, exactly. It's this, not that.
Yeah.
So yeah, first one, acknowledge that there's going to be emotions, I think, around this as you're doing it. That is important. And then really giving people the space and freedom. So I think I was doing a training for another team recently, and they wanted immediate like return on investment numbers and data. And I think that is the wrong way to approach it. Yes, you will get there, but first you need to let people experiment and play and figure out how it works for them. So Michael, who's also one of our legal engineers who was formerly at Trustpilot, he had this great sort of saying, or what he focused on. He taught me this and I thought it was awesome, is you just need to teach or get the person to find that one use case that changes their life. And then once they get that one use case, they then will be all in. But the challenge is getting them to figure out that one use case that is solving their particular pain point and changes their life. And for him, it was actually just writing Excel formulas, giving that right to AI, and then oh my God, then you start thinking of all of these different things. So I think you need to acknowledge the emotions, give people the space and the opportunity to experiment, to play, and to learn, and don't pressure them immediately with, having return on investment demands. And then I think that will ease the way into adoption. And then for at WorkSome right now, we are trying to be AI native. So everyone is using AI, and we're talking about it all the time. We're sharing in our all hands. We have Slack channels that are devoted to it. So really allowing people to exchange and talk about how they're solving it with the tools they have is also very helpful. And then interestingly, because I'm trying to build an AI native legal function, we've actually made the decision that I'm not going to manage anyone. So I'm simply going to be doing legal work and legal ops, legal engineering work, and offload the management of people to someone else so that I can just be devoted to this. So then it's also what sort of decisions are you making to enable your people to focus on what they need to focus on?
So do you see then, just that was really interesting what you're saying about your own team. Do you see then a future where AI is actually impacting the structure of teams in quite a big way? Obviously, it's you're doing it as an AI native legal function, but do you think that will become the norm, or
I
what
think
are your
it
thoughts on
has to. I mean, like the CEOs and CFOs don't want to hire any more people on the legal team. That's the truth of it. I can do so much more with AI. Just thinking about like reading documents, generating documents, right? Like that is so quick. I don't ever use anything obviously without reading it or verifying it, but there's just so much that AI can do and I can do it so quickly. I have multiple AIs open and going all the time. So I'm like working on like 5 different tasks all at once.
Yeah. And Ellie, I'm just wondering, like, you've seen this in your role at Wordsmith, like you've done, and probably in your old job as well, like implementing AI across lots of different teams. Are there some key things that you see for those teams that make it work really well? Are there some key things that stand out to you that really make AI stick?
Yeah. I think, like, ultimately to echo what Laura said, like, you can deploy the best tool in the world, but if people don't see themselves in it, then the buy-in's just completely lost. So, like, what I tend to say to people is that you've got to identify the problem first. You have to work from that being step one. Not looking at this bright and shiny tool that can do all these wonderful things, but maybe it doesn't match the problem that you're trying to solve. So the first thing I would do is collectively as a team, try and figure out where your problems are, where are the pain points. And sometimes that can come from something as simple as what we did at Doc Planner, which was, and it's awful to say, but time tracking. People are really, really not in tune with where their time is actually going. And they're so surprised when they actually see it in black and white on an Excel, um, where their time's going. So, for example, I worked with a head of legal in Spain who we were having the conversation around a use case to do with Ask Legal. So having AI answer repetitive, monotonous questions that the business were asking her. And she had kind of estimated that, I'm spending maybe around like 2 hours a week at like answering these questions in Slack. But it actually turned out it was closer to 4 to 6 when you actually went through her Slack and she started like tracking just the smallest ping on Slack down to, can you jump on this huddle? Can you do, because she was the only point of contact. And that's a huge differentiation in time from 2 to 6. So I would say identify your problems and perhaps time track to actually figure out where those are. And from there, figure out what your ideal outcome is going to be. So, like, almost reverse engineer it. And from there, you can then start to figure out your use case and how you're actually going to plug these tools to actually solve your problem. And sometimes that might not even be AI. Like, I am obviously such a pusher and a fan of AI, but ultimately, if you can solve your problem with the tools that you already have lying around, then don't plug something in that just because it's bright and shiny, I guess. And then the final thing would be that within like the culture of the team, you are naturally going to have people who are all in, like they're absolutely your like superheroes when it comes to a new tool, a solution, or AI itself, and really, really lean on them to try and impact the culture more. So, maybe they show a use case that they're working on, or look, this saved me X amount of time, to really, really rally those people who are maybe not so inclined to touch it or a bit scared of it, or they're not really sure what to do with it. So I would say like identify your key users, your heroes, I guess, and try to get them to influence culture a little bit more to bring everybody up.
Yeah. I think that point you say around the heroes or champions is a really strong
Yeah.
one, and it ties into what Laura was saying about stories and getting people to see themselves in it. And Laura, you mentioned Mike, and Mike and another colleague in the privacy team when I was at Trustpilot, they became super users of Wordsmith. And this isn't trying to sell Wordsmith on this podcast, but they became super users of it, and that then spread around the team because they would say, "Oh wow, you did that," and then security suddenly want an Ask Security channel as well as an Ask Privacy one. Like, so yeah, it's that kind of, yeah, like the momentum that comes with getting someone who's really engaged, I think can be massive.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's the idea across the board, right? So we, again, not pushing wordsmith, but we've just launched the Legal Engineering Project, which is a community for just builders in-house more generally. And we ran a poll recently and people just want to see use cases. So I think that goes back to the idea of, you know, we're talking about these things very high level, and this is a problem that I have with conferences and webinars, is that a lot of the time you're talking about this in a very theoretical sense. People just want to see use cases. They want to see themselves in the problems, in the solutions. And I really think that's the way that this is going. And that's how you ultimately not only get buy-in for a tool, even if you're selling it or you're looking to buy one, but actually implementing it internally in your own team is just to share use cases. Everybody's problems, ultimately.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, just to shout out that the legal engineering project that you've started, Ellie, I think it's absolutely brilliant and builds on a lot of the work that you've done,
Thank you.
Laura, with the community.
Yeah.
Um, and I like I've already been speaking to people in there and having conversations, and had a call the other day, and it's like it it was great to get feedback from people, but like it felt also, it was like, oh, there are people with these same issues that I'm having and these same issues. So it's quite cathartic and helpful, I think, to have those conversations. So yeah, I think, yeah, anyone listening should absolutely go and check that out, and we can put a link in the description and everything for that. Um, I think I think we're all very bought into this, and we all really like it and get lots of benefit from using AI. My perspective when I speak to people in the business who are, let's say, a privacy lawyer or a contracts lawyer or a paralegal who really wants to use these tools but actually just struggles to find time. What I was kind of, it'd be interesting to hear from perhaps Laura, your perspective as a GC and senior lawyer, how you would help someone create space for their juniors to kind of experiment and play. Um, like if it was a more traditional organization which perhaps doesn't have an AI native piece at the start, how would you go about?
I think there's sort of two different points here. So one was something that was interesting, and again, not selling Wordsmith, but I use Wordsmith for the Slack bot. So when I first rejoined Worksum, I hooked it up and just had very basics. And it was not going to be able to answer all the questions, but I just wanted to get it going. I was still trying to figure out where things were, and I get it up there. And then I started asking questions and playing with it. And obviously it's public, so everyone can see it. And so people are watching me, and then I encourage people to use it. And like within a week, we had people asking questions that then were showing me like future workflows that I actually needed to build. So I think, putting it out there, you sort of showing people how you want them to use it and giving them the ability to play. Like I just told them, you can ask whatever questions, right? You can test it, you can see, do whatever, just, start using it. And kind of doing that in public, I think allowed people to then feel comfortable, and so the adoption was much quicker than I thought. And now they're asking for like crazy things like, I want to check on the status of a third party who sent Adobe sign to our CEO to sign something. I was like, well, I don't think I can build that. Right. I don't have access to that. But I'm like, I love where you're thinking, where you're going, right? Like thinking about how to use that. So that's one. And then the second is, again, giving them permission and the time and the space. So depending on your organization, um, you know, I would say to then hold them accountable, talk about that or show it. So something that we do at Worksome is at the all hands, we're now showing how people in all the different departments are building solutions. Our CEO is super excited because he's actually building product solutions and prototypes that then, if enough people need it, right, is actually going to go into the product. So again, it's leading and showing and then celebrating people and showing those actual use cases. So kind of tying everything back together, doing it in public, being a leader and giving them permission to do it, I think are key.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And Elly, in your experience in your previous roles, how did you balance that kind of ongoing workload with I want to try and experiment. I want to use AI. I want to try these new tools.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, like, I think I was very, very much encouraged, like, and this is a whole different conversation of the legal operations, legal engineer roles, but I was very, very much encouraged from, like, literally from day one to go and test and build and experiment. So I definitely didn't need permission there, but I very much think, like Laura's point around lead by example, if people are seeing you constantly showcasing things, building things, giving ideas here and there, they're going to start adopting that too because they feel like that is the standard and that's where we should all be going. And people tend to adopt to that type of, I guess, mentality or practice quicker. And then the other thing is just, yeah, I think holding those sessions, like even as a team on a Wednesday, we used to have a session. We used to call it Doc Planner University, where everybody would come together and they would show a use case or something completely outlandish that they were super, super interested in. But it was just a really safe space to ask those questions and show things, or maybe they had a problem that they were running into that they wanted to get everybody's minds in on. So someone from Brazil could ask someone in Spain, could ask someone in Germany. And just, like I said, giving people that space to just ideate and play. Like, I think we lost a lot of that from developing into adults. Like, kids have no real care for, oh, if I fail or I ask something silly, or just experimenting with things. And I think that's something that we could really go back to adopting more. And I think that that's something, and I hope you all agree that you felt like at Wordsmith that you just play and you just figure it out and there's no wrong answer. Just give it a go.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I think the top-down nature of it, so not making people not feel silly because you've got the GC or you've got senior lawyers or you've got the CEO having a go and asking stupid questions, maybe making mistakes, using things in the wrong way. It then makes you feel, oh well, if they're doing it, there's no problem if I make a mistake, and almost it looks good if I'm trying to push the boat a bit and try push the boat out, push the boundaries, some kind of pushing analogy there.
Yeah.
Some pushing, but it just like it creates it creates that culture and it creates that atmosphere of experimentation, trying things, and yeah, I just wonder if there are more established organizations which have a more ingrained culture that is perhaps more risk averse, how that can happen. And I just think about my experience, and it's on a different topic, but when I was at Trustpilot, we spent, my old boss and then myself, like we spent quite a long time on almost like a multi-year project of just getting people to know about us, talk about the privacy team, and get that culture change. But it's an ongoing project, and it's like if AI is being brought into a legacy business which is very, very conservative, that period of adoption, even if you have senior people who are up for it, feels to me that period of adoption maybe a multi-year project. So it's kind of like a not losing faith and utilizing the tools you've talked about with champions and everything to really, not just sort of give up after the first hurdle.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely. Oh, sorry. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go for it. Go for it.
One of the things that I've also been surprised by is people who maybe are not also, let's say, technology fluent, or who don't see themselves as someone who is a builder. There's that group of people, and then like you're just talking about risk averse businesses where the employees are not encouraged to experiment or take risks. When working with those groups of people, they are very cautious. So I've noticed that you have to actually tell them, they, even if they're on the legal team, they're thinking about the consequences. Like, can I put the company's information into this tool? Even, I worked with a pharmaceutical company that had their own pharmaceutical company GPT in-house. It's theirs, enterprise. And the employees weren't using it because they weren't given instructions that it was okay to put company information in there. So I think if you are in those spaces or industries, you really need to tell your people, it's okay. This is our internal version. It's enterprise. You can put all of our company data in there, or be very, very clear on, what they can put in there and what they can't, because some people are just not using it because they're scared they're going to do the wrong thing and they don't want to do the wrong thing. So give them that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. People need rules, right? Too much freedom and it drives people insane. But I would also say, and I've said this to even some people I've talked to, like non-customers around, how do they get into AI? How do they start building? Don't you don't always have to wait for permission, in the sense of all of these tools have free trials, have free versions that you can use outside of work that don't use company information. You can use dummy data, but the industry, it's just moving so quickly that if you don't do some sort of experimentation now, I'm really scared for you in the next year or so with where you're going to be in terms of career wise. And I really don't think that that's necessarily the right way to go about it when you're trying to influence, adoption internally, is scaremongering. But there truly is a fear side to it that you have to be very, very aware of, that white collar jobs are going to be affected. Like there's no way of it not happening. So I really think as a duty to yourself, like you owe it to yourself to actually try these things out and have some level of awareness or skill around them, be that outside of work if it's locked down internally.
Yeah, I think for lawyers especially, there is another fear which could kind of prohibit people being a doctor of AI, and that's like a fear of being wrong. I think there's so much of lawyers, like, you can never give wrong advice because you'll get yourself in trouble, you affect your firm's liability insurance or whatever. If you're in-house, you might be causing a major issue for the business. And like, I see that, like, I think about some of the sessions that I've done now speaking to people who are interested in using AI. There is often quite a lot of enthusiasm in the room, and there's people who are excited and interested by it. But there's almost, like you said, Laura, a little bit of fear about, can I use the tool? People have seen the horror stories of made up court judgments and things like that. But yeah, I think one thing that can really take the sting out of it is that exact point you said, Ellie, about like using it for a personal use case, just making something up, playing around with it just to try it out. So yeah, I think there's a key thing. Every single topic we've discussed so far, it seems to come back to people at the end of the day, and managing people, and the way we're getting them to adopt it by showing them the benefits and not scaring them, I guess, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something I love about lawyers, because I love when they see, they're so surprised when things actually do go well, but their nature is typically skepticism. And I love that about them. I think that's totally fair. Look, that's been drilled into you since university. Now, that's again a whole different conversation on universities and how we teach law. But anywho, but again, I think it comes back to top down, right? Like if you are not given the permission and you are not explicitly told to go and do this, you're going to be afraid. And again, you can do it outside of work, but I do think it comes back to what you said earlier, Ben, about that top-down approach and just somebody having a mandate in an all hands just saying, please go and do this. Obviously use your best judgment. Do not put, unless we have an enterprise plan, don't put any sensitive data in there. Don't do X, Y, Z. We trust you on that part, but please feel free to go and play. It benefits us, it benefits you. It's that mutual relationship.
And I think when we're saying, go and play, what I always do is start small. So often I will start with something personal when I'm trying out a new tool, or okay, I want to use Claude Code. So I made my son a game, right? Nothing to do with my business, but I just want to see how it works. Or I'm using Claude Cowork, so I'm going to start on my downloads folder because I don't care if it deletes everything in there. I don't need that, right? So starting small and manageable. I mean, I use AI for work. I also will use AI. I tell people like we've used it for gardening, for getting dressed, for doing workouts, for nutrition, right? You can use it for so many things outside of your work and try and experiment, and then you can bring it and be more confident in your skills when you come to work and start using AI.
100%. I think even Dom, one of our, our product managers, he was showing me his Claude skill yesterday for the bin rota. So in the UK, like obviously you've got your bins that they're either taken out on this day or that day. So he has a ping that comes through on a certain day to remind him to put his bin out. But literally, like how low risk is that? Like, okay, it shouldn't mess up, but if for some reason you configured it wrong, okay, you missed your bin day. That's not great, but it's not the end of the world. Nobody's harmed. But exactly, like very, very low risk use cases is a fantastic gateway to really just get started. And it's only upwards from there.
Yeah. I'd like to. That's great. I'd like to turn to some practical sides now. We've talked a bit about how you can get people involved, how you can get people excited, perhaps dealing with skepticism as well. One of the things, obviously, putting this in a business context is ROI. Laura, you touched on this earlier, saying don't immediately expect massive ROI from day one. But what have you seen that has been really effective for like metrics or data or ROI with selling that to either internal stakeholders or external stakeholders when considering AI? And Laura, perhaps we start with you on this one.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, like when I moved from Wordsmith to Worksome, I told them I need budget for an AI tool. Like I'm not coming unless you give me budget for an AI tool. So that's one is like I'm gonna have these tools, and luckily the CEO, that wasn't a problem because he wanted to build an AI native company. So that was easy for me. So the first thing that really when I'm thinking about ROI is I'm actually looking at like one, from looking at a perspective of like, what problems am I solving and what does leadership care about? Right? Like, we can do hour tracking and that is helpful. Um, but does the leadership necessarily care? They just care about what problems you're solving. And then how does that translate into dollars? So, one of the first things I've done, because I've started February, what we're in March now, is when I hooked up again, Wordsmith advertisement, the Slack bot. Wordsmith's Slackbot is hooked up into Claude. And so I asked Claude, can you go through the Slack? And I want you to tell me how many were answered without any human intervention, meaning Wordsmith answered them. I didn't need to do anything. How many were like legal bot assisted, where I had to come in and clarify or do some things? Um, how many really required me, right? Like this is a unique legal judgment that needs my time, and then what were not legal questions. So what we're trying to do there is working with the CEO to show we're getting all the non-legal questions off my desk. I'm not dealing with those, sweeping those away. Then we're growing that number of the, bot answered. So I can show from January to February, right? We had zero and the bot answered. And now I think we're up to 30 or 40%. So 30 or 40% of the questions immediately within the first 2 months taken off my plate, right? And then if I wanted to, I could look at time, a number, and then actually put a monetary amount to that. But even just showing the percentage of change and how we're doing it, I think right now we're up to a total of like I'm not answering 41% of the questions in the legal Slack channel. So that's a significant amount of time. And I think it's also, I think I only spend like 2 hours in there, but it's probably more like great 6 or 8 answering questions. So I think starting small where you're also making changes and you can track metrics with the tools that you have. And so then I will start to do that more and in other places. So I actually have a whole dashboard that is live tracking that then I also share with the business so they can see what's on my calendar, what are my top priorities. You can see the Slack bot on a monthly basis, what we're getting rid of. And eventually I do want to get to a point where I want to see which department is using legal resources the most. and then figure out why are they using legal resources the most. Is it an education problem? What do we need to do? Should I be spending my time there? Or where should I be spending my time as a legal counsel, you know, from a business and revenue point of view? So the great thing about AI is that you can use it to get all that data, process it for you, and show it to you. Where before, right, we'd have to like manually count, I guess, and classify the Slack questions, which no one
Yeah.
wants to do that.
No, no, absolutely not. I've seen they're really, really good points. I have seen everything from time to resolution all the way to actually surveying the business to see how their interaction with legal has improved. But I think that to Laura's point, you can have all these data metrics. Some are easier to, get more than others, but it's really what do you do with it? Because we can all have a fancy dashboard. That's great. But what are you actually using to then change your department? So is it that, okay, we've used Slack MCP and we have seen that the same group of people are asking the same question every single week. Do we need education in that area? Do we need to strengthen our answers there? Like, what is actually going on? Like, let's diagnose the problem again. Do we need an extra hire? Like, we have seen that our third party vendor reviews have gone up from, I don't know, 2 a week to 4. Is that trajectory going to continue for the next 6 months? Do we need to put another headcount there, or do we need to buy a tool? Like, what do you need to do with that data? But yeah, there's a ton of metrics. And I think, again, it really depends on what leadership needs to see. What does the business need to be tracking effectively? But it's all possible.
Yeah. And I think certainly from my experience on on the privacy side, exactly the same. Of there are some metrics which you can get pretty easily, which are good at demonstrating the value. I think the one thing there was a couple of points that just stood out for me. There was one was when I was we were implementing uh, AI in my last role. It was the exercise of going through and looking for AI specifically to understand what we could automate and things. We actually uncovered a lot of stuff that we realized we weren't doing, or like perhaps the senior level were not aware of. So you said, "Oh, hold on a minute. Our juniors are only spending a third of their time on work that is appropriate for them. They're spending a third of their time doing stuff that shouldn't be in our team at all, and a third of the time spending things that we should have someone more junior, paralegal, or someone helping with on that." So you then say, well, okay, AI is great. We can speed up the third of the work that they should be doing because they can use AI for that. For the more junior stuff that's easier, more replicable, perhaps there can be that kind of ask privacy channel that automates quite a bit of that. But hold on a minute, there's 30% of someone's time that was being spent on something they shouldn't have even been doing. So we can now go and have conversations around the business. And it's like that has all come from implementing AI, but it is not an AI gain. So I think that narrative, and then like building the narrative and communicating that is so important, because you might say, well, we've shaved off all this time, we've made all these great implementations. First question you will get from a senior person is like, all right, what are you doing with that time then? It's like,
Yeah.
and you either need to say, well, actually everyone was working till 9 p.m. and they're now working till 5 p.m. and everyone's much happier, less stressed, and we're going to have a better functioning team as a result. Or you say they were working till 5 p.m. and now they're working till 3 p.m. We've got 2 hours a day to work on better implementation and dealing with the fact that our workload's going like this, but the headcount's staying the same. So the narrative piece for me is like always the most important to add on to all the data.
Yeah, 100%. You got to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I'd like to look at now is this is a bit either in your personal life or in work. What's your favorite use case for AI, and how has it changed your life?
Hard. It's a hard answer or hard question.
Oh, I have a ton of, so I've been very, very privileged. Like, obviously, I implemented AI when I was in house, but now I've worked with, I want to say, close to 100 legal teams working on use cases. So I definitely have a lot to pick from there. But this is gonna be so, so simple, but how it's revolutionized my life. So I run a legal ops job board that I post every week, and I have for the past 2 years manually gone through LinkedIn, Indeed, posts, every corner of the internet, and I have read those jobs and I have decided if they meet the criteria or not to post, because you've heard me say a million times that it is such an unstandardized like area or like role. I've seen legal ops jobs that were actually call center jobs. Like, it's insane. I have been very, like I said, huge into AI, obviously, but I've been very skeptic about letting that part go because it's been so dear and close to my heart, but also I want to make sure that it's meeting said criteria every time. But when you break it down, what is it? It's me evaluating a set of rules in my head. I'm scraping things and then evaluating it against a set of rules. That's exactly what AI can do. So what I have done is I have built a workflow on, and I use a couple different systems just to evaluate it out. So I've built it in Wordsmith. I've also built it on Claude. And I have basically gotten it to evaluate all the roles, see if it meets the criteria or not, and then build it out into my lovely Notion table that I do. And then I QA it for myself. And then I also get it to help me build the newsletter. And that has now gone from taking me hours and hours and hours per week down to probably 5 or 6 minutes, which is a massive help. Also, I will say, sorry, Perplexity Comet is chef's kiss when it comes to LinkedIn and being able to read. You can see it actually physically working on your screen. It'll go through LinkedIn, it'll pull all the links, and yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So 10 out of 10 for
Great. Thanks, Elly.
that. Welcome.
I mean, yeah, it's become such a part of my life in all facets. It's hard to pick just one. But I think if we're going to kind of like look, using Ellie's example, I enjoy teaching. So also both in work and in my personal life, I will use AI to build systems and procedures. So for example, like the dashboard that I built. And then I will use AI to sort of like reverse engineer that. So then I can explain it to someone using sort of my tone of voice. And then I also have a newsletter that I publish every week. And AI has been really instrumental in helping me do that. But at the same thing, at work, I'm building processes. I'm a startup scale up. So building those processes out and then creating the documentation that goes with it that explains it to the rest of the business and how it works. AI has just been amazing at that, and also stress testing, right? Ideas, brainstorming, seeing where there are holes in arguments. I think that whole sort of, building workflows and processes is where AI is extremely helpful.
Nice. Yeah, good mix of personal and work there. I think mine is I built this ages ago. It was a gem on Gemini, and it's just been sat there for ages, and I use it loads. It's I use it to write, like, I got a parking ticket, and I was like, I shouldn't have got this parking ticket. So I built this
Same.
complaint bot, and it's so simple, but it does like a really good first draft. And
Yeah.
the way I use it is I just will rant. I'll put like whisper flow on and just rant about it, and then it will just ask me a few questions, give me the output. Like, I feel better. I send my complaint off. Got off my parking fine. Brilliant. So
Win-win all
yeah,
around.
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
absolutely. That's
I mean,
hilarious.
it's not that. It's not really fundamentally different from just a prompt, but it actually, because it's there, it's just like quite nice to just go, right, I'm just going to turn it on and rant at it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I've actually become more and more, and I don't know, again, back to our how to implement, is it if it's by influence, that I sit beside Ross and he, our CEO, and he consistently talks to AI rather than like type and prompt. I used to find it really annoying, but now I don't. But I've started talking more and more. And even on my phone, like when I'm walking, I will now use, I was never a voice noter because I feel like that puts the obligation and burden on the other person. But I will start using voice to text instead.
Mm.
And I just find,
Yeah.
like, back to your point about having the rant, maybe it's not a rant I'm having, but I'm just able to get my thoughts out so much clearer and like off the cuff and go back and forth rather than spending the time, actually sitting down and having to type and think about what I'm going to write and then maybe checking it grammatically and blah, blah, blah. But I do think that having that dictation or that voice to text element has massively helped me also.
Yeah, I love dictation. Like,
Yeah.
It's amazing. And what I'll do, like when I'm on runs, I have different folders. I have both. So I found that ChatGPT, I think, has the best voice, it better than Claude. It also like catches Danglish once you get the Danish English mix, and it actually gets the right vowels in there. So I'm very impressed with it. But I'll have projects in there, and then I'll just click into the project so it has the context when I'm running or something. If I want a voice note or to remember something, because it will leave me. And I usually have good thoughts, when you're running and things like that. So yeah, running, just pull it out, dictate into there, boom, and then when you come home, you have it. It's great. I use
That's
it all the
super. I'm gonna
time.
have to try ChatGPT's with my accent. I found it quite difficult
Oh,
sometimes. Yeah. For it to capture what I'm actually saying. Otherwise, I've got to put on like an American accent, which yeah,
well, I want to hear
that's
that.
fun. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. But yeah, it is. It's very, very good. So I must give ChatGPT's a try.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear because Claude doesn't love me. It has problems with me.
Interest.
Yeah,
For Claude, my
yeah.
buddy.
Great. Well, just before we round up, I wanted to ask you both what excites you most about AI in the next 12 months. Um, Perhaps we've talked quite a lot about non work in those examples of favorite use cases. So perhaps in a work context, where do you think it's going to go? What's exciting you? Ellie, you're nodding. I'm gonna. You look like you look like you've got an idea ready to go there.
No, I really don't. Look, I think we have heard the word agent's been thrown around for such a long time now. I think in the next, like my prediction, excuse me, in the next 12 to 18 months is we're going to see truly agentic work. Why is my voice sound like that? Excuse me, let's try that again. We're going to see truly agentic work. And I think that this futuristic idea that people have had for such a long time of you're going to have somebody who's almost like another hire sitting with you, whether it be via hardware. Like I know that OpenAI have been talking for quite some time about, I don't know if it's a necklace or what they're going to bring out, but I'm very interested in hardware. But that you're going to have somebody who can be just goal driven. So ultimately you tell them what the goal is, so what the outcome that you want it what you want it to be is, and it's just going to go and do that. You're not going to have to sit and prompt and actually give it step-by-step workflow instructions. So very basic answer, but I do think that it is going to come to fruition in the next 12 to 18 months, possibly sooner. God only knows. Every single week I feel like I'm playing catch up at this stage. But yeah, I do think that's going to happen. And then the repercussions on those entry level jobs in legal specifically, I'm not so sure. Everything has a trade-off, but I do think that no more than my role didn't exist a year ago, there's going to be new roles that look different. People need different sets of skills, but that's where I think it's going.
Right. Thanks, Ellie and Laura.
Can I just say ditto? No, I'll
Did it.
I'll also elaborate. I definitely think that is where we are moving. And what I think also is interesting, if you're looking at how Claude is set up, right? You've got sort of your Claude ND file, which is your overarching sort of universal context layer. So we're building these, hey, this is my universe, this is who I am. And then with skills, we're building very particular, let's say, actions that I want the AI to take on my behalf. What does it need to know? So we're sort of just dumping out pieces of our brain and giving it to AI. And then when you combine that with agents, it makes it extremely powerful. And what I think Claude just released last week was that now you can run on your computer from your phone. So like I can start something at home, walk to this train, follow it on my computer, get on the train, open it, see what's going. Like the fact that I could have something constantly working in the background, and then have a finished product, it really then becomes we're orchestrating, right? We're no longer managing or directing people. It's managing, directing, and orchestrating agents and making sure that we're giving them the right instructions and giving them the right context and information. Something that I learned, for example, is like if Claude's going to create Notion pages for you, like maybe put in there that, Claude needs to then tell you where it's going to save it, uh, or what it's called so you can find it when you go to Notion. Little things like that make a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, absolutely. But then like it even begs the question of, so you're talking about it when you're walking to the train and doing things during the day. Like, can you imagine like logging off from work in the evening or whenever and having it work overnight for you. Like, imagine the amount of like capacity you would free up to do human things. I think would be super, super cool.
Yeah. Something that was interesting, both of you speaking, referring to agents as it, and then sometimes saying them. And I think that's
Uh,
something I'm noticing, people, referring to an agent as we've used the term like co-counsel or co-pilot, like a person who's there. But yeah, noticing people starting to use that more and more, because they are now tools which are so much more capable. It is like having a person there. Great. Well, perhaps we'll wrap up there. For our listeners, just thinking about, if you're considering implementing AI in your teams, you've got to think about culture, practical steps, return on investment, and just really the people at the center of everything. So yeah, thank you very much, Elly and Laura, for joining. And yeah, we'll speak to you both soon. But yeah, it's been lovely chatting with you both.
Thanks so much for having
Thank
me.
you. Yeah,
Good.
thank you as well.